So over the weekend, there was a really cool discovery on the original Xbox subreddit with a development kit containing a debug or a development build of Far Cry for the original Xbox. Now, this story originally came from Reddit user NewStrategy5261, and they say, "Hi everyone, first post here. I acquired an Xbox development kit recently and found this development build of Far Cry on it. There is no audio in this build, and the FPS are dropping when looking at trees. Thought some of you might find this interesting. Sorry for the janky video, I don't have a capture card." Now, many people reached out to me, making me aware of this, asking if I can help get the game preserved, which of course I'm always happy to do. And the Reddit user was able to reach out to me on Twitter, and after some discussion and back and forth, we were able to get this game preserved and available. So without any further ado, this is the development build of Far Cry 1, running on the original Xbox. It is also now available on archive.org, and it's also being sent to the Hidden Palace. Now, links for everything is in the description below. Now, the other thing to mention here is that not only are we preserving the executable and the game files for Far Cry 1, we're also backed up and preserved the hard drive image in its entirety, and this is obviously very interesting to some people because there can be the possibility of uncovering deleted and hidden files. Now, I have done a quick pass of doing that myself, and I have uncovered some additional executables of the game. However, unfortunately, they are corrupted, but there certainly could be the possibility of locating additional hidden files. Now, let's get a few things out of the way first. This is a development build, which means that it can only run on an Xbox with 128 megabytes of RAM. Now, I've personally tested it on my development kit. I also have a debug kit, but I was unable to run it on a retail unit. However, I am told that any retail unit with a RAM mod will also launch into the build. So at the end of the day, if you have a stock 64 megabytes modded Xbox, then unfortunately this build will not run for you. However, all is not lost because it will run fine under the Xbox emulator known as XEmu, and we've also preserved the full hard drive image as mentioned, which can be loaded directly into XEmu, and with a debug BIOS, it will start up the XDK launcher, and from here you can test out the dev build for yourself. But keep in mind, if you do run it via XEmu, there are graphical issues that won't be present on original hardware. As for the build itself, it's obviously very early in development, and it's more of a vertical slice than anything. There are 4 separate levels that can be loaded with some additional test levels as well, although one of them would crash as soon as I launched into it. There's also a multiplayer option to create and get into matches. Now, this is something that may work via System Link, but I was not able to test it. But one good part about the multiplayer option is that it allows you to free roam around the map with the analog sticks. Now, performance of the build is obviously not the main focus, as it can get very choppy in some areas. The counter on the screen is the FPS counter for the game, and as you can see, we're running quite well, but as we approach water or trees, the FPS does tend to drop. The game is running at the Xbox's native 480p progressive mode as well, and overall, this is a pretty interesting build. Now, some people may be wondering, is this just a build of Far Cry Instincts, which was a game that released exclusively for the original Xbox in 2004, which is a different game. Now, Far Cry Instincts is a more narrative-driven game with set objectives rather than the open-world sandbox of a traditional Far Cry game. But there's definitely some compelling evidence to suggest that this is indeed a Far Cry game or an attempt to port Far Cry to the original Xbox. And this is for a few reasons. The first is that Instincts, as we said, is a completely different game that does share similarities, but there are definitely some differences as well. The first weapon you pick up in Far Cry is the Desert Eagle, which is entirely different from Instincts, and you can see that this is exactly the same as we see in Far Cry 1. Not only this, the enemy models and various other models from the game are also present in Far Cry, but not in Instincts. And if I was to guess, it's probably because the original Xbox didn't have enough overhead and memory to handle a full-blown port of Far Cry itself. As for the game, it's about 1.6 gigabytes in size, and the folder structure will be very familiar to you if you have modded Far Cry games in the past. Now, one of the things I'm very curious about is whether this particular game ended up becoming Far Cry Instincts after a certain period of time, when the developers maybe realized that the OG Xbox with its limited memory space was not really well equipped for a fully open world game such as Far Cry, hence the pivot to something like Far Cry Instincts. But there is some conflicting information on that, because if we take a look at the file header itself, so this is the executable file header, and every Xbox executable is denoted with the XBE or Xbox executable extension. And we can see here that the timestamp of this build is Thursday, October the 27th, 2005. Now, this is very interesting because Far Cry Instincts on the original Xbox, I believe, launched in September of 2005. So this is telling us that these builds were being done after the retail release of Far Cry Instincts. And a little further down, you can see that there is more kind of evidence to suggest that this is indeed an attempt to port Far Cry to the original Xbox. And you can see here that the executable name or the debug file name is farcry_xbox.exe. And if you are someone that did work at Crytek back in the day and you are familiar with this particular build, maybe you were, working at the company at the time, or you have some familiarity with it, reach out to us and let us know, because these types of stories are very fascinating. And I'd love to know the reason why a game like Far Cry, even though Far Cry Instincts did come out previously, never saw the light of day. I think ultimately, probably I would say the original Xbox may have not really had the enough juice underneath the hood to run a pretty sophisticated open world game at the time like Far Cry, but that is obviously just a guess. So if someone knows more than what I do, please reach out and let us know. Now, for those who are wondering why preserving the entire hard drive image is important, this is a great example. It's because there are instances where deleted or hidden files or folders can be recovered. Now, with this tool known as FATX Recover, it can open up any Xbox hard drive image file and perform deep scanning analysis on it to identify hidden files or deleted files. Here you can see that we have a folder called FC_instincts, which is a folder that was located on the development partition. Now, this folder unfortunately is empty, but the tool was able to recover 2 additional Far Cry 1 Xbox executables. However, when I recovered them both, they appeared to be corrupted. But there may be more to find on this hard drive image. Not to mention there may be interesting stuff in the save partition and other places. Now, for anyone who has Xbox hardware and wants to back up their hard drive, I recommend a tool called XBDM Dumper. This will dump the entire hard drive as an image, which can then be opened up by FATX Recover to extract the files and folders you need, as well as perform that deep analysis on the partitions for any deleted files that could be recovered. And of course, links to both of these tools will be in the description below. Now, as mentioned, various links to everything that you saw will be in the description below. So if you want to check out the development build for yourself, make sure that you have an OG Xbox with at least 128 megabytes of RAM or higher. Or if you have access to XEmu or XEmu, whatever you call it, you can run it via emulation as well. I do want to give a huge thank you to the subreddit community, the original Xbox subreddit community, for making me aware of this release. And of course, the original poster that reached out to me and talked to me about this build as well. We were able to get it preserved and out there for you guys, just as we had it intended. Now, the other thing I want to mention is if you are sitting on a development kit, an OG Xbox development kit, debug kit, whatever, and you are wanting to get it preserved, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help with that. Look, there are many ways, and there are a lot of people out there that can do these types of things. I'm certainly not the only one, but I'm more than happy to do it if people are interested in having me to take a look at those particular builds. But look, we're going to leave it here for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this episode, please don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and we will catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.